Good morning, everyone. I hope this day finds you well thus far, and I really hope that this PowerPoint won't be as painful as I think it might be. We're going to start the power of research, which is Unit 7 in your textbook in relation to, obviously, our research paper. If you are not okay with, how the note-taking goes today and you want to get more information, this unit or these notes come from pages 1404 to 1419 in your textbook. All right. I passed out the assignment sheets for the research paper before I left, but we need to go over some things, right? I can't just drop a project on you and expect you to figure it out. I mean, I could, but that's not the way I roll. First thing you need to do, every single person has to choose a topic. You should always aim to develop your own topic or find your own unique approach to an assigned topic. What I mean by this is you should come up with something that hasn't been argued, or if you're going to argue something that has existed for a long time, like abortion, somebody asked about earlier this week, then you should find your own approach to it. So say something new, add something to the debate. Don't just say what anybody else has said before. You can narrow your topic and find a unique approach to it by viewing it through one of several lenses. Now, what's a lens? Well, there are different types of lenses that we typically go to for literature, but you can definitely apply them to other situations. For example, psychological, if you look at the upper left box, or not box, oval here. How does a totalitarian society change the people who live in it? If we're talking about George Orwell's 1984, a psychological perspective will focus on just that, the psychology behind it, right? How does it affect people's minds? Political lens, however, talks about politics. In relation to George Orwell's 1984, again, a political lens would be what idea or event inspired Orwell to write the novel. So, the political turmoil that ensued that caused him to write would be you critiquing that novel with a political lens. Multicultural, the example your book gives is how have authors in other cultures depicted repressive societies? So you're not just looking at what's happening in this particular context, you're looking at what's happening with this situation in multiple societies. Somebody mentioned doing police violence or police brutality. This is something, if you want to look at it through a multicultural lens, you could look at police brutality in America versus the UK or versus the UAE or whatever country. A technological lens would be focusing on, obviously, technology is the base of that. An example, how accurately does 1984 predict the loss of privacy in modern life? So you're seeking to apply standards of what was with technology to what now is or what will become. This one could be applicable if anybody's doing a science-related thesis, but if you want to use these to kind of gear your topic or to find a jumping off point for it, feel welcome to do so. All right, develop a research plan. First thing, after you kind of have your topic, is you need to formulate research questions. Right now, pause this video. I want you to take a few minutes and write down several open-ended research questions about your topic. Now, an open-ended question is a question that you can't answer. All right? So think about your topic. You should have an idea of what it is by now and write down just some open-ended questions. All right. Now that you have your open-ended questions, go ahead and highlight keywords. Keywords are terms, names, and phrases that are specific to your topic. That specific means they're not applicable anywhere else, right? Or it's not likely that they are. Later, you'll use these keywords in search engines. So in my example, what threats to personal freedom existed in Britain after World War II? What was occurring in the Soviet Union at that time? I've read that Big Brother is supposed to resemble Stalin. What are the similarities between them? These are the open-ended questions that I've developed in this example. Now, the highlighted portions are what I consider to be the key words. For example, personal freedom. Britain after World War II, Soviet Union, and Stalin. These are words that when I plug into a search engine, i.e. Google, I will get results specifically for these things, right? We want to be as specific as possible, because if you type in the whole question, for example, into Google, you'll get a bunch of crap, right? And we don't want crap. We want direct answers or direct information for what we're talking about. Next thing you do is you identify relevant sources. You know those crappy resources I mentioned in the previous slide? Well, this is what we're trying to avoid. Once you formulate your specific research questions, you're ready to start investigating sources. Woo! Ready to do research. I don't know if that's exciting, but it's exciting for me. All right, you should explore the full range of credible sources that are relevant to your topic and questions. The first two I would say you should go to are general encyclopedias and newspapers and magazines. Two groups, rather. So general encyclopedias are often the best place to start. You can find an overview of your topic and identify additional keywords. I think in the modern age with technology, Wikipedia might be what's substituting general encyclopedias. Back in my day, not that it was that long ago, but we had a full collection of like actual book encyclopedias, and you had to go and look it up and find what you were talking about. I'm sure the sub can relate, but I'm not going to age anybody here. But now if you Google something on Wikipedia, you can get a pretty brief summary, so you kind of know where to start. Newspapers and magazines are a great source. We tend to take for granted that newspapers give us the best information in real time, because we read it, a week later, gone. But they can often give you an insight into history, values, popular culture, and events. And don't stop with the news articles. Instead, delve into a variety of information available in these sources, like advertisements, comics, political cartoons fall into that category, obituaries, editorials. Older magazines might not have the same things that a modern one does, but they're still a really good source, right? That being said, older magazines and newspapers, I should say, are often available on microfilm, which I would be surprised if anybody knew what that was, but they're like slides, or online and electronic files, which is, in this country especially because it's so new, how you're going to find your sources for this research paper. All right, continuing from the last slide, documentaries. Documentaries can help you understand eras, movements, inventions, trends in individuals' lives. Documentaries can do more than that. A lot of times they're like research papers in video form. So they're a great source if you're going to, talk about anything in relation to history, really. The History Channel has some great documentaries. Or you can binge watch Netflix until you find something you're going to argue. But, Netflix. But don't Netflix and chill. It's not promoted in this English class. I'm just saying. All right, interviews and oral histories. So they present different perspectives on an era or an event. So if there was an interview from, Woodstock, in the late 60s, if there was somebody that went to the first Woodstock and they were like, yeah, like it was totally wicked, and they're talking about their experience, well, they were actually there, so that interview is really good. Besides that, you can have original research if you're talking about, school environment, and you wanted to conduct a survey within our school, like anything in relation to that. So questionnaires that you create, experiments you perform, field research that you conduct, all of those can provide valuable new information that is definitely applicable to your research paper, depending on your topic, obviously. Don't be afraid with the original research to go out and ask people that aren't in our school either, because if you're talking about, engineers or construction, you might want to go talk to some construction workers. All right, other resources, you can include photographs, maps, song lyrics, statistical abstracts, museum exhibits, databases, government publications, pretty much anything else you can throw into this. They all apply. A photograph can mean a million different things depending on how you analyze it. But if the person that took it had a specific purpose, you can definitely incorporate that. We don't just have to think of research as being just articles or just newspapers or just something from a book. Those are the primary sources that we tend to go to, but they don't have to be the end all be all. Then last but not least with this particular topic, don't be afraid to ask a librarian. Here at this school, we have Miss Tara, and she is phenomenal. She knows so much about a lot of different topics, and if nothing else, she knows books. So go ahead and ask her. Be like, hey, this is my research topic. Can you help me? I'm struggling as a measly 12th grader. All right, just to recap, you can use all these different sources and ask the librarian, no matter where you're at, even at your university, which is, what I used to do when I got lost. Well, not lost in the library, but lost in research. All right, I just want to take this time to say if your cell phone is out, go ahead and put it away. Amir. Anyways, back to this presentation. All right, finding relevant sources. So how do you find something that's relevant to what you're talking about? When we talk about this, there are two different types. All right, so primary and secondary sources. To get back into things, because I took a bit of a break, successful research papers often synthesize primary and secondary sources. Both types of sources can provide useful information, but each has disadvantages as well. For those of you that don't know, a primary source you can think of as an example of a text that was written as the event was playing out. For example, we talked about journals before. I know we've gone over this with our notes, but just to reiterate. And then secondary sources are a step away from that. So primary sources, definition, materials written or created by people who took part in events or observed them. For example, personal documents such as letters, diaries, autobiographies, speeches, emails, so on and so forth. The advantages, they supply firsthand information, and they usually provide insight into the attitudes and beliefs of the authors. And they can be really, really specific. However, disadvantages is subjectivity and lack of broad perspective may make them extremely biased. They are written by one person, and we all know that when we write about something that we were involved in, we could, most of the time we tend to exaggerate it. Like if you were caught cheating on an exam and now you're telling the story to all your friends about how you got out scot-clean, but, we all know that that's not entirely true. All right, secondary sources. So secondary sources are records created after events by people who were not directly involved. So it'd be like if I wrote about, what's a good example? If I wrote about a fight that happened at school, but I was sick that day, then that would be a secondary source. I might base what I write on primary sources and what I heard from my friends, but I didn't actually see it. Therefore, it can't be a primary source. Examples, encyclopedias, textbooks, biographies, second-person newspaper, magazine articles, so on and so forth. Encyclopedias, like I said, they offer a really good history, but the people that were involved in those events didn't write them. Advantages, they're helpful for getting an overview of the topic. They sometimes include excerpts from a variety of primary sources. Your textbook is, also a good example of this. However, they are only as reliable as the sources which they are based. They can be biased, but it depends on who wrote them, and they can lack the interest provided by an individual choice.